Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are around the world. I'd like to thank you for joining me today and have a discussion about the newly launched ISTQB Test Automation Engineering syllabus. My name is Andrew Pollner. I'm the product owner for the Test Automation syllabus, and I will spend the next several minutes describing to you some of the history behind this syllabus, the syllabus that preceded it, and where we're going in the direction of test automation with ISTQB. So please join me in discussing the new ISTQB Test Automation Engineering version 2.0 syllabus. Let's talk a little about the background of the TAE syllabus for reference purposes. Back in 2014, we assembled a group of technical individuals who had been focusing on test automation for many years and recognized that the ISTQB portfolio needed a representation on test automation to address the growing need for test automation within software testing itself. So with that, we came out with what was called the Test Automation Engineer syllabus, introduced in 2016 at the advanced level. Being at the advanced level, of course, required that folks needed to have the CTFL certification prior to attaining the Test Automation Engineer certification. And the reason for that is simple. CTFL, as many of you know, has the grounding concepts, the foundational concepts that every tester should know. And a lot of the techniques that are discussed within CTFL and best practices in software testing are techniques that can and should be actually implemented within test automation. So it's very important to have that grounding knowledge so that when you go down your journey of test automation, that you actually apply those best practices in your automated tests as well. So a few years later, ISTQB created what we call the specialist stream, and that covered specialized areas which at the time test automation fit into very nicely. And up until just recently, the test automation syllabus was actually part of the specialist stream. So when we look at test automation, what are we actually seeing out there in industry? Well, first of all, we've done a number of surveys, ISTQB has, as well as we've noticed other industry surveys. They continue to reflect on the fact that test automation is really a very important part of enabling the success and the efficiency of software testing. One of the reasons why test automation continues to grow is because there's many more tools now than there were, even 10 years ago. Specifically, open source tools, open source software have created automated test tools which every year increase in capability and features, making them really very well suited for companies large and small. Additionally, of course, we have commercial tools that have been around for many years that support the users, that have help desks, that have concise documentation, etc. So there's a number of different tools that are out there at the disposal of software testers to use now more than ever, and the capabilities continue to increase and align to the various environments that developers are developing with. And finally, we have now a new paradigm in how software is developed and deployed, and that's through the paradigm of DevOps, or for those that actually also include the security aspects, there's the DevSecOps. With DevOps and DevSecOps, we have a situation where automation is even more important. There's automation in the actual software development process. And then within that process, we need to figure out how do we best incorporate our automated tests within those environments. So understanding that became a critical part of what we wanted to describe in this updated test automation syllabus. With respect to the folks that are doing automation, as I described earlier, there are so many tools now to choose from. What's important is not necessarily as much a specific tool, but what the approach is going to be to using any given tool that you select. So ISTQB is not really specific in particular tools. What we are is essentially best practices and overall architecture that we recommend that could be applied against any tool. So in essence, we are tool agnostic. We're not trying to favor any tool because there are a lot of wonderful tools that are out there. Additionally, whereas in the past you had someone that maybe was called a test automation engineer, often what we're finding now is that there's a lot of users or consumers of test automation. These could be your test analyst, your business analyst, test lead. So it's not necessarily just a technical role that's actually using the automation. From a development standpoint, yes, of course, we need technical folks developing the automation, but automation can and should be used by a wide variety of folks that are supporting testing activities. So what we're doing is we're really moving more toward talking about the actual activities that need to be done, regardless of any specific role that's assigned to that activity, because ultimately it's the activity that we're looking to do. We also have a situation where organizations have various different tools, and they want to be able to figure out how to best integrate those tools into their software development lifecycle. So those are things that need to be addressed, need to be understood, and there's ways in which those can be done. And finally, with every new technology that comes out, new tools come out, new techniques need to be defined or developed to support that. So we're very conscious about that. So let's talk about the TAE update. There's a number of new or expanded areas in content. So one of them, which I just touched on, was the automation within the software development lifecycle. Now, even though I talked about DevOps and DevSecOps, there are a lot of organizations that are still using traditional waterfall methods or the V model. They may have started with Agile. Maybe they're not necessarily using DevOps. So what we wanted to do is really have something for everybody and kind of describe where automation fits into those different software development areas. In terms of infrastructure and environments, we describe a little more deeply now the different environments where software tester and test automation engineer would be working with. That includes, of course, their local environment, a build environment, integration environment, staging environment, and multiple other environments until you get to your production environment. So it's important to understand how, when using automation, you have to be able to be ready to use and run those scripts in those different environments, test them out, and make sure that any problems that are found are easily understood and addressed quickly so you can move to your next deployment environment. We cover a little more now around different techniques that are out there that can be supported by test automation. So we have test-driven development and behavior-driven development, which of course are development paradigms, but they benefit greatly from the use of automation. So we discuss that. And we've expanded the area that talks about the benefits and limitations of test automation. We know test automation is extremely powerful, but we also wanted to make people aware that there are some things that might make automation more difficult to use or potentially more time-consuming for the test team to work with. And then we cover additional implementation considerations for test automation, and we've expanded the discussion around the test automation framework, which I'll just get to here in a few minutes. Other areas of expansion in the ISTQB syllabus include discussion around the page object model and keyword-driven testing, talking about the objects and element mapping, the importance of that in terms of making sure you have a robust test automation solution. We expand the discussion around monitoring and logging and dashboards and what that means and how one can create those and the benefit and the different stakeholders that they support. And we talk about continuous integration and continuous deployment. That's part, of course, of the pipeline discussion we see with DevSecOps and CI/CD, and of course where the appropriate role for test automation is within that. We also talk about support for automation throughout different testing levels. So you can think of a developer looking at a code level test and what they would be doing and how they'd be using automation there, versus someone who's doing integration testing versus someone who's doing user acceptance testing. And finally, we talk about automated testing, the deployment path. How do we actually help use automated testing to deploy our applications and make sure that they are correct, that they are error-free, and that the project can actually release something to the community by minimizing the risk from having tested. So here's the familiar diagram for test automation architecture. You'll see on the left is what we have called the generic test automation architecture, GTAA. It has a number of different components to it. The inner components include test generation, test definition, execution, and adaptation. That has not changed. We do show now the interaction with the system and the test at the bottom. And of course, that whole process of those four components is what comprises the test automation framework. Now, across on the outside, we've expanded the discussion around configuration management of those components, the project management necessary to actually develop and deliver the solution, and the test management has been expanded to how the solution is then used to exercise the automation within the test process. Now, to the right, we've expanded the discussion of the test automation framework into a discussion of layers. There's a lot of new content here, which I think will really help to bring this kind of notional concept of an architecture into something that's a little more practical for folks to understand in terms of how to implement. So in a nutshell, what we talk about with the test automation framework layers are that at the very lowest level, you would have core libraries. These are libraries of functionality that allow you to essentially interact with a system under test, or even interact with a particular IDE, interactive development environment of how the application was coded. So the core libraries really produce the functionality that can be used across all types of test automation. At the next level up, we have the business logic. This is the logic that's very specific to your particular application, and that then would be limited to be used for that particular application itself. The business logic actually depends on the core libraries, which are below it, and that's why we call it a layered approach. And then ultimately at the top, we have the actual test scripts. The test scripts themselves define the logical path to the application that you're navigating, the inputs that you're producing, the validation that you're looking to do against the application. And that's all defined in the test scripts. And for those to work, of course, they require the business logic to be able to use the logic of the application or the system under test. Let's talk a little bit about test automation roles. So when we got down to defining the different areas around test automation and looking to expand the current test automation engineer syllabus, what we realized was that there's really a lot of information around test automation. And we recognized that we could break that information apart into really two distinct areas. One of them is around engineering, And that area focuses really around architecting solutions and building, sustainable automation, understanding the different choices that one has, how to evaluate the different tools and technology for that purpose. And then the other area really focused more on strategy. It was more strategic. And that was really more about, how do we actually implement automation in a successful way that adds a lot of value to the organization. So what we realized was that there's really enough content, not just for one syllabus, but for two syllabi that are very related to one another, but they're not preconditions to each other. So what we did with this release is we came out with an updated version of Test Automation Engineering, which is what I'm talking to you about today. And we also came out with a brand new syllabus called Test Automation Strategy, which will be discussed on July 11th. We will have another video for that. Both of these products are now released on the ISTQB website, and you are free to look at the detailed documents, syllabus, and glossary terms, and sample exams for each of them. So why do we do this? Well, we realize that with test automation, there's really a paradigm where you have a test automation engineer or the engineering team who's developing the test automation solution on the left, and they want to make sure that they're creating a solution that works. And that's what we have on the left, the engineer doing it right. Let's get it done right. But then on the right, we have someone who's more of a strategist who has kind of the long view of the organization and of the project. They want to make sure that that great solution is implemented properly, provides a lot of return, provides the reports that stakeholders need, and really helps determine whether or not the application that's being tested is ready for release. So that's why, because of that overlap, we've created two different syllabi, both with new and expanded content that basically work together very well. So, to conclude, the new Test Automation Engineering version 2.0 syllabus recognizes that there's more complexity in automation now than there was, even a few years ago. More environments, more technology out there, and that costs time and money to understand and to implement. So we've gone ahead and implemented these changes, these updates to the syllabus to recognize those changes that everybody is facing and to make it easier to learn what the best approaches are to implementing a proper test automation solution. And that includes, programs that are starting to move to DevOps and DevSecOps, where additional automation knowledge is required, where automation is now infused into the process through those pipelines. It really takes automation kind of to a new level. So the new test automation syllabus, Test Automation Engineering version 2.0, is there to fill those gaps. And by doing so, what we are doing here at ISTQB is continuing the vision that started back in 2014 with the release of the 2016 Test Automation Engineering syllabus, and providing the valuable information to the test community globally on test automation. Thank you, and I'm open to answer any questions that people may have. Very good question. So why did the syllabus name change to Test Automation Engineering, whereas prior it was Test Automation Engineer? The reason why we did that is because, much like I mentioned, that testers are now looking to do certain test activities, and those activities can be done potentially by a technical tester, test engineer, a business analyst, etc. In the same way, by describing engineering as the activity, we still encompass the engineer as part of that activity, but we're not limiting the work to only be for a particular role that's called test automation engineer. So if a developer is doing test automation, they are part of the test automation engineering team. Same would happen with a technical tester or a business analyst who might be doing test automation. So the engineering name is really to broaden the scope of what we're really covering, what the message is. And of course, it continues to include the test automation engineer position as well. Next question is, why would you need foundation level certification if you're really only interested in the test automation engineering certification? So I touched on that a little earlier, and I'll explain that test automation engineering is a syllabus that does not really include any of the information from the foundation level syllabus. The way ISTQB works is that we develop syllabi that are not meant to really overlap in content to a great degree. The reason why is that if you take some certification like CTFL, the next certification you take, you don't want it to be repeating a lot of what you already learned. So ISTQB assumes and recognizes that those individuals who have taken CTFL will already have that knowledge, and we don't cover that material. Now, earlier what I mentioned was that there are a number of different techniques that are covered in foundation level, and for those of you who are already foundation level certified, you'll know what I'm talking about. Techniques such as boundary value analysis, equivalence class partitioning. Those are really very good techniques to use in testing. And guess what? When you develop your automated tests, you should be using those techniques as well to define your data sets for inputs and for evaluation. So that's essentially the reason, is that we really want to make sure that you have all the right toolkit of information available to you, so that when you embark on test automation, you're applying those best practices, and then additionally what we recommend for test automation to be successful. So we have a question about how soon can we expect to have the syllabus in Spanish. So it's a time-honored tradition in ISTQB that syllabi initially come out in English, and then over time they get translated to local languages. It could be Spanish, French, German, any number of languages are available. And the effort in translating the syllabus doesn't come from the main working group that developed the syllabus, but that then comes from the local member board that is looking to regionalize that syllabus for that region. So what I would recommend is for the gentleman Ramon, who's interested in having it in Spanish, is for him to contact his local testing board and ask them to please look at translating that syllabus into Spanish. I anticipate that we'll be seeing translations to all of the major languages that are used in ISTQB currently for this syllabus in the near future. But again, that becomes the responsibility of the member board in the region supporting that syllabus. Very good question. Will you be required to redo or retake the TAE exam, or does the current certificate count? So let me explain. The current certificate, if you are a certificate holder for test automation engineer, that's the 2016 syllabus, you are good. There's no need to recertify or to have to take the exam again. However, because we have new and expanded content, we urge you to look at the syllabus and see if you might be interested in maybe even taking a course to learn more about the new content in there. And if you did that, then it may make sense if you wanted to also take the new exam. But there is no requirement to take the exam if you're already certified for TAE 2016. The ISTQB site currently has sample questions that were developed specifically for this new syllabus, TAE version 2.0. So if you go to the site, you'll see for TAE 2.0, under the download documents, there's a section, and there's a sample exam and sample questions and sample exam answers. That's separate from the 2016 sample exam questions and answers. So anybody who is interested in only the new syllabus, we would focus your attention to the download section in that area if that's the exam that you plan to take. I do also want to add real quick that ISTQB has sunset rules around syllabi. So for the next year, we're going to have both the current syllabi, TA 2016, and the new syllabus 2024 version 2. They'll both be available, and the exams will both be available for English exams. For foreign language exams, those are extended another few months beyond that. So you will see both syllabi on the site, and that's what we do typically with all syllabi as we transition from one to an updated syllabus. Any other questions? Okay, well, I am glad to have spoken with you. I had a chance to meet with all of you today. Hope this is great news for you to recognize that there's now a new syllabus, an updated syllabus for test automation engineering version 2.0. I encourage you to go to ISTQB.org, look at the document, download it, share it with your friends and colleagues, and here's to more test automation. Thank you and have a good day.